Maya Rodriguez wiped down the coffee shop counter for the third time that morning. Her sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal the edge of intricate black ink that curved around her forearms. The autumn sun streamed through the windows of "Been There, Done That," casting warm shadows across the mismatched furniture that gave the place its charm. She had been working at the small coffee shop in downtown San Diego for 8 months now, and despite her friendly demeanor and excellent work ethic, she could still feel the weight of judgmental stares from certain customers. The bell above the door chimed, and Maya looked up to see Mrs. Henderson shuffling in. Her silver hair perfectly styled, and her designer purse clutched tightly against her chest. Mrs. Henderson was what Maya privately called a regular with reservations. She came in every Tuesday for her vanilla latte, but never failed to make some comment about Maya's appearance. "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson," Maya said with a genuine smile, already reaching for the vanilla syrup. "The usual?" Mrs. Henderson approached the counter cautiously, as if Maya might suddenly transform into something dangerous. Her eyes, as always, were drawn to the tattoos that peeked out from Maya's long-sleeved shirt. What she could see was just a fraction of the artwork that covered Maya's arms. Geometric patterns intertwined with meaningful symbols that told a story. Mrs. Henderson would never bother to understand. "I suppose," Mrs. Henderson replied curtly. "Though I still don't understand why this establishment allows employees to display themselves in such a way. In my day, people took pride in presenting themselves professionally." Maya's smile never wavered, though something flickered behind her dark eyes. "I understand everyone has different perspectives, Mrs. Henderson. What matters most to me is making sure you get the perfect cup of coffee to start your day." As Maya worked the espresso machine with practiced efficiency, Mrs. Henderson continued her familiar lecture. "Young lady, those markings on your skin suggest a certain type of person. People make assumptions. You know, they wonder about your background, your choices, your character." The woman behind Mrs. Henderson in line, a woman in expensive workout clothes, nodded in agreement. "It's true," she chimed in. "I mean, what kind of person covers themselves in tattoos like that? It's not exactly the image you want representing a business." Maya finished Mrs. Henderson's latte, creating a perfect leaf pattern in the foam. She slid the cup across the counter with the same professional grace she maintained, despite the daily criticism. "Here you go, Mrs. Henderson. Extra hot. Just how you like it." Mrs. Henderson took the cup but wasn't finished. "I'm just saying, dear, that appearances matter. Employers judge. Customers judge. Those tattoos send a message about who you are and what you've done with your life." Maya began preparing the next order, her movements precise and controlled. The woman in workout clothes leaned forward conspiratorially. "Honestly, I don't feel comfortable with my children seeing things like that. It normalizes a certain lifestyle. You know?" The coffee shop had grown quieter, other customers pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. Maya could feel their eyes on her, some sympathetic, others curious, and a few clearly agreeing with the women at the counter. "I appreciate your feedback," Maya said calmly, handing over the second order. "Is there anything else I can get for you today?" Mrs. Henderson huffed, apparently unsatisfied with Maya's lack of reaction to her criticism. "You should consider covering those up, dear. Maybe then people would see you for who you really are, instead of making assumptions." Maya's hand paused for just a moment as she wiped down the counter again. "You know, Mrs. Henderson, you're absolutely right about one thing. People do make assumptions based on appearances. Sometimes those assumptions are completely wrong." After the women left, Maya continued her morning routine, serving customers with the same professional demeanor. Some regulars knew better than to judge. Like old Mr. Patterson, who came in every day for his black coffee and always asked about Maya's weekend plans, or Sarah, the nurse who worked night shifts at the hospital and appreciated Maya's ability to make conversation without being overly chatty during Sarah's exhausted morning stops. But for every understanding customer, there seemed to be two more who looked at Maya's ink and immediately categorized her as trouble, unprofessional, or worse. She had grown used to the whispered comments, the suspicious glances, and the occasional lecture about the importance of maintaining a respectable appearance. Maya had learned to let these interactions roll off her back, but today felt different somehow. Maybe it was the way Mrs. Henderson had spoken about her character, or the support the workout woman had shown for such judgmental thinking. Maybe it was the accumulation of months of similar encounters. Whatever it was, Maya found herself thinking about the assumptions people made, and the stories they told themselves about others, based on nothing more than surface appearances. The lunch rush began around noon, bringing a steady stream of office workers, tourists, and local residents. Maya worked efficiently alongside her coworker Jake, a college student who had never once commented on her tattoos except to occasionally compliment the artistry. During a brief lull, Jake nudged her shoulder. "You okay today? You seem a little off," he said, restocking cups while Maya refilled the pastry case. Maya shrugged, arranging the fresh muffins and croissants their supplier had delivered that morning. "Just thinking about how people see what they want to see, you know? They look at someone and immediately decide who that person is, without knowing anything real about them." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, I get that. People do it to me too, but probably not as much as they do it to you. It's stupid, honestly. Some of the best people I know have tattoos, and some of the worst people I know look like they stepped out of a business magazine." Maya smiled at that. Jake was young, maybe 21, but he had an old soul and a perspective that often surprised her. "Thanks, Jake. Sometimes it just gets to you, you know, not because what they're saying hurts, but because they're so confident in their ignorance." The afternoon brought a different crowd. Parents picking up coffee after school runs, retirees meeting friends for casual conversations, and the occasional business meeting held over lattes and pastries. Maya noticed a group of women in the corner booth who kept glancing her way and whispering. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language was familiar. The slightly scandalized expressions. The way they looked at her, and then quickly away when she caught them staring. Around 3 o'clock, a man in his 50s entered the shop, moving with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested military training. He was dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt, but something about his posture and the way he surveyed the room before approaching the counter made Maya take notice. His graying hair was cut short, and he had the weathered look of someone who had spent time in challenging environments. "Good afternoon," Maya said, smiling warmly. "What can I get started for you?" The man studied the menu board for a moment. "Large black coffee, please. Nothing fancy." As Maya poured his coffee, she could feel him watching her movements with the kind of attention that seemed almost professional. When she handed him the cup, he nodded his thanks and found a seat near the window where he could observe the entire shop while appearing to read on his tablet. Maya continued her work, serving customers and maintaining the organized chaos of a busy coffee shop. She noticed the man glancing up occasionally, but he seemed more interested in the general atmosphere than in staring at her tattoos like so many others did. Around 4:30, the after-school crowd began filtering in, teenagers looking for caffeine and snacks, parents grabbing coffee before evening activities, and the usual collection of people who used the shop as an office or social space. Maya was wiping down tables when she overheard a conversation from a group of women who had been in the shop for about an hour. "I just think it's unprofessional," one of them was saying. "I mean, look at her arms. What kind of establishment allows employees to look like that? It's so inappropriate for a family-friendly business," another agreed. "My daughter asked me what all those drawings were, and I didn't know how to explain it without getting into things she's too young to understand." Maya continued cleaning, her movements steady and controlled, despite the familiar sting of judgment. She had heard variations of this conversation countless times, but it never got easier to listen to people discuss her as if she weren't there, as if she were some sort of exhibit rather than a person. "She probably has a criminal record or something," the first woman continued. "People like that usually do. I don't understand why they hired her." The military-looking man at the window table looked up from his tablet. His attention now focused entirely on the conversation. Maya saw him frown slightly, but he didn't say anything. Just listened with the same careful attention he had been giving his reading. "I'm going to speak to the manager," the second woman declared. standing up and looking around for someone in charge. This is exactly the kind of thing that drives customers away. Families don't want to bring their children into places that employ people who look like that. Maya felt her jaw tighten, but she maintained her professional composure. She had learned long ago that responding to such comments only made situations worse. Instead, she focused on her work, wiping down each table with methodical precision. The woman approached the counter where Jake was working on inventory. "Excuse me, are you the manager?" Jake looked up, confused. "No, ma'am. The manager is in the back office. Is there something I can help you with?" "I need to speak with whoever is in charge about your employee," the woman said, gesturing toward Maya. "Her appearance is completely inappropriate for a business like this." Jake's expression hardened slightly. "Maya? She's one of our best employees. Is there a specific problem with her service?" "Look at her," the woman said, as if that explained everything. "Those tattoos, that whole look. It's not professional. It's not family-friendly. People don't want to see that when they're trying to enjoy their coffee." Maya could feel the eyes of every customer in the shop on her now. Some looked sympathetic, others curious, and a few seemed to agree with the complaining woman. The familiar heat of embarrassment and frustration rose in her chest. But she kept working, kept moving, kept her expression neutral. Jake stood a little straighter, and Maya could see him preparing to defend her. Before he could speak, however, the man at the window table stood up and walked toward the counter, his empty coffee cup in hand. "Excuse me," he said politely to the complaining woman. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation." The woman turned to him, perhaps expecting support from a respectable-looking man of his age and bearing. "Oh, yes. I was just explaining to this young man that the tattooed employee is inappropriate for a business like this." The man nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "I see. And you're making this judgment based solely on her appearance?" "Well, yes," the woman said, seeming slightly confused by the question. "I mean, look at her. Those tattoos tell you everything you need to know about the kind of person she is." The man turned to look at Maya, who was still methodically cleaning tables, her face carefully composed despite the public nature of the discussion about her character and worthiness. Their eyes met for a moment, and something passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, or understanding. "That's very interesting," the man said quietly, turning back to the woman. "Because I think you might be surprised by what those tattoos actually represent." The woman looked confused, and several other customers had stopped their conversations to listen. Maya paused in her cleaning, sensing something significant in the man's tone and bearing. "I'm sorry," the woman said. The man smiled slightly, but there was something serious in his expression. "Those tattoos you're so concerned about. They tell a story you clearly don't understand, but maybe that's a conversation for another time." He handed his empty cup to Jake with a polite nod. "Excellent coffee, by the way. Thank you." As the man headed toward the door, Maya felt something shift in the atmosphere of the shop. The woman who had been complaining looked confused and slightly unsettled, as if she had missed something important. Other customers seemed curious about what the man had meant, but he was already gone, leaving behind only questions and an uncomfortable silence. Maya finished wiping down the tables and returned to the counter, where Jake was looking at her with obvious curiosity. "What do you think that was about?" he asked quietly. Maya shrugged, but she was wondering the same thing. Something about the man's attention, his careful observation, and especially his final comment suggested he had seen something in her tattoos that others missed. But what that might be, and why it had seemed significant enough for him to intervene in a stranger's complaint about her, she couldn't begin to guess. The rest of her shift passed quietly, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that the encounter with the military-looking man was more important than it had seemed. As she locked up the shop that evening, she found herself thinking about his words and wondering what story he thought her tattoos told. 3 days had passed since the strange encounter with the military man, and Maya found herself thinking about his words more than she cared to admit. She had arrived early for her Thursday morning shift, using the quiet time before opening to organize inventory and prepare for what promised to be a busy day. The local high school was hosting a college fair, which meant they would likely see an influx of parents and students throughout the morning. Maya was arranging pastries in the display case when she heard voices outside the shop. Through the window, she could see a group of teenagers gathered around something on the sidewalk, their voices raised in excitement and concern. She moved closer to get a better look and realized they were crowded around someone lying on the ground. Without hesitation, Maya grabbed the first aid kit from behind the counter and rushed outside, flipping the door sign to open as she went. The cool morning air hit her face as she approached the group of students. "What happened?" she asked, kneeling down beside a young girl who appeared to be unconscious. "She just collapsed," said a boy with a backpack slung over his shoulder. "We were walking to school and she said she felt dizzy. And then she just fell down." Maya quickly assessed the situation, her movements efficient and practiced. She checked the girl's pulse, which was rapid and weak, and noticed her skin was clammy and pale. The girl's breathing was shallow but steady. "What's her name?" Maya asked, gently tilting the girl's head to ensure her airway was clear. "Emma," replied another student. "Emma Martinez. She's a junior." "Emma," Maya said firmly but kindly. "Can you hear me? I'm going to help you." Emma's eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused and confused. Maya noticed she was wearing a medical alert bracelet and quickly checked it. Type 1 diabetes. That explained everything. "Does anyone know if Emma ate breakfast this morning?" Maya asked the gathered students while she continued monitoring Emma's vital signs. "She said she was running late and skipped it," one of the girls replied anxiously. "Is she going to be okay?" Maya was already reaching into her pocket for her phone to call 911, but she also knew that Emma needed immediate help. Low blood sugar could be life-threatening if not treated quickly. "I need someone to run into the coffee shop," Maya instructed, her voice calm but authoritative. "Behind the counter, there's a small refrigerator. Grab one of the orange juice containers. Move fast. But don't panic." One of the boys sprinted toward the shop while Maya continued to monitor Emma's condition. She positioned the girl in a recovery position, ensuring she could breathe properly if she became sick, and checked her pulse again. 911. "What's your emergency?" came the voice through her phone. "I have a teenage girl who appears to be having a diabetic emergency," Maya reported, providing the shop's address and Emma's condition with the precision of someone who had made similar calls before. "Patient is semi-conscious, showing signs of severe hypoglycemia. I'm providing first aid until paramedics arrive." The student returned with the orange juice, and Maya carefully elevated Emma's head, speaking to her in a soothing but firm voice. "Emma, I need you to try to stay awake for me. Can you hear my voice?" Emma's eyes opened again, more focused this time. Maya helped her sit up slowly, supporting her back with one arm while carefully administering small sips of orange juice. "That's good, Emma," Maya encouraged as the girl began to respond better. "Just small sips. Your blood sugar dropped too low. But you're going to be fine." Within minutes, Emma's color began to improve and her awareness increased. By the time the paramedics arrived, she was sitting up on her own, embarrassed but clearly much better. "Nice work," said the lead paramedic, a woman in her 40s who moved with practiced efficiency. "How did you know it was a diabetic emergency?" "Medical alert bracelet. Plus the symptoms," Maya replied, stepping back to give the paramedics room to work. "She was running late and skipped breakfast. Classic hypoglycemic episode." The paramedic looked at Maya with obvious respect. "You have medical training?" Maya hesitated for just a moment. "Some." After the paramedics transported Emma to the hospital as a precaution, and the students continued on to school, Maya found herself standing outside her coffee shop, suddenly aware that several people had witnessed the entire incident. A small crowd had gathered during the emergency, including some of her regular customers who had arrived for their morning coffee. Mrs. Henderson was among them, looking at Maya with an expression she had never seen before. Something between confusion and grudging respect. "That was very impressive," said Dr. Williams, a pediatrician who occasionally stopped by the shop between hospital rounds. "Your assessment was spot on, and your response was exactly what that girl needed. Where did you learn emergency medicine?" Maya felt the familiar discomfort of being the center of attention, especially when the attention involved questions about her background. "You pick things up," she said simply, heading back toward the shop. But Dr. Williams followed her, clearly intrigued. "No, that wasn't someone who just picked things up. You moved like someone with serious medical training. Military, maybe? Combat medic?" Maya's step faltered slightly, but she kept walking. "I should get back to work. People need their coffee." Inside the shop, she tried to return to her normal routine, but she could feel the change in how people were looking at her. The same customers who had always seemed uncomfortable with her appearance now watched her with curiosity and something approaching respect. Jake arrived for his shift an hour later, full of questions after hearing about the incident from other students at his college. "Dude, everyone's talking about how you totally saved that girl's life," he said, tying on his apron. "The whole campus is buzzing about the tattooed barista, who's apparently some kind of medical superhero." Maya rolled her eyes while refilling the coffee bean containers. "I helped someone who needed help. That's what any decent person would do. But you knew exactly what to do." Jake pressed. "Like, medical level knew what to do. And Dr. Williams was in here earlier, asking if you had emergency medicine training. Do you?" Before Maya could answer, the bell chimed, and the military man from earlier in the week walked in. He looked around the shop, his gaze settling on Maya with that same careful attention she had noticed before. "Good morning," he said, approaching the counter. "Large black coffee again, please." Maya poured his coffee, acutely aware that Jake was watching the interaction with obvious curiosity. As she handed over the cup, the man studied her face for a moment. "I heard you helped a young woman this morning," he said quietly. "Diabetic emergency." Maya nodded, unsure where this conversation was heading. "She's fine. The paramedics took good care of her." "I'm sure they did," he replied. "But she was lucky you were here. Not everyone would have known how to handle that situation so effectively." There was something in his tone that made Maya look at him more carefully. He was watching her with the same recognition she had sensed during his previous visit, as if he knew something about her that she hadn't revealed. "Are you military?" he asked suddenly. The question hung in the air for a moment. Maya felt Jake's attention sharpen beside her, and she was aware of other customers glancing their way. "Why do you ask?" Maya replied, her voice carefully neutral. "The way you handled that emergency, your situational awareness, the precision of your movements, and those tattoos." He gestured toward her arms. "They're not random designs, are they? They mean something specific." Maya's heart rate increased slightly, but her expression remained calm. "People see what they want to see in tattoos." The man smiled slightly, but his eyes remained serious. "Some people do. Others recognize the real thing when they see it." He took a sip of his coffee and added, "Eagle, globe, and anchor. Semper Fi." The words hit Maya like a physical blow, though she managed to keep her expression neutral. Jake looked confused, clearly not understanding the significance. But Maya understood perfectly. The man had recognized Marine Corps symbols in her tattoos, symbols that most civilians would never identify or understand. "I think you might be mistaken," Maya said carefully. "Maybe," the man replied, but his expression suggested he didn't think so. "But I've been around long enough to recognize family when I see them." He paused, studying her face. "The question is, what's a Marine doing? Serving coffee in San Diego, instead of serving their country?" 9. Maya felt the walls of her carefully constructed civilian life beginning to crack. For 8 months, she had successfully hidden her past, allowing people to make their assumptions about her tattoos and her character without ever correcting them. But this man, whoever he was, had seen through her disguise with disturbing accuracy. "I think you have me confused with someone else," she said. But even as she spoke the words, she knew he wasn't buying them. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," he said quietly, and Maya felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "Afghan veteran. Purple Heart. Medical discharge after an IED incident outside Kabul." Maya's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. Jake was staring at her with wide eyes, clearly stunned by this revelation. Several customers had stopped their conversations to listen, including Mrs. Henderson, who looked as if she had been struck by lightning. "How do you know that?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man extended his hand formally. "Commander James Mitchell, Navy SEALs, retired. I make it my business to recognize fellow service members, especially those who've made sacrifices for their country." Maya stared at his outstretched hand, torn between the civilian life she had built and the military identity she had tried so hard to leave behind. Around them, the coffee shop had gone completely silent, everyone straining to hear and understand what was happening. "I don't use that title anymore," Maya said finally, but she shook his hand. "Maybe you should," Commander Mitchell replied. "The young woman you saved this morning is lucky that a trained Marine medic happened to be working at a coffee shop, but I suspect that wasn't the first time your training has come in handy." He was right, and Maya knew it. Over the past 8 months, she had quietly helped with several minor emergencies. A customer who cut himself on broken glass, an elderly man who had chest pains, a child who had an allergic reaction. Each time, she had downplayed her actions, allowed others to take credit, and deflected questions about her knowledge and training. "Why are you doing this?" Maya asked. "Why did you seek me out?" Commander Mitchell glanced around the shop, noting the attention they were drawing. "Because hiding who you are doesn't honor what you've done, and because I think you've forgotten something important about being a Marine." "What's that?" "Once a Marine, always a Marine," he said simply. "No matter where you are or what job you're doing, you carry that with you. Those tattoos you're so careful to keep covered? They represent honor, courage, and commitment. They represent a woman who served her country with distinction and was wounded in the line of duty. Why are you ashamed of that?" Maya felt tears threatening to form in her eyes, emotions she had kept buried for months, suddenly threatening to surface. "I'm not ashamed," she said quietly. "I just wanted to be normal. I wanted people to see me as just Maya, the barista, not Maya, the damaged veteran." Commander Mitchell's expression softened. "There's nothing damaged about you, Lieutenant. You saved a life this morning with skills you learned in service to your country. You've been serving this community for 8 months. Probably helping people in ways they don't even know about. That's not damaged. That's exactly what a Marine should be doing." The shop remained silent, every customer hanging on their words. Maya could see Mrs. Henderson dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, looking stricken. Other customers looked confused, amazed, and in some cases, ashamed. "I've seen your service record," Commander Mitchell continued. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Saved the lives of 12 Marines when your convoy hit that IED. You stayed conscious long enough to treat the wounded, even though you had shrapnel in your own leg and a concussion that should have knocked you out. You want to talk about character? About what tattoos represent? That's character, Lieutenant. That's what your ink really means." Maya stood frozen behind the counter, feeling as exposed as if he had stripped away every layer of protection she had built around herself. Jake was looking at her with an expression of awe and confusion, clearly trying to reconcile this new information with the woman he had worked beside for months. The silence stretched until Mrs. Henderson suddenly stood up from her table and walked slowly toward the counter. Maya tensed, expecting another lecture about professionalism and appropriate behavior. Instead, Mrs. Henderson stopped in front of the counter and spoke in a voice thick with emotion. "I owe you an apology," she said, her usual sharp tone replaced by something much softer. "I've been judging you based on things I don't understand. I didn't know. I never imagined." She trailed off, clearly struggling with words. Maya watched her in amazement, never having seen the imperious old woman at a loss for words. "You don't owe me anything, Mrs. Henderson," Maya said gently. "Yes, I do, Mrs. Henderson replied firmly. "I do owe you something. Respect, gratitude, an apology." She paused, looking directly at Maya's tattooed arms. "And I'd like to hear about those tattoos, if you'd be willing to share. I have a feeling they tell a much more important story than I realized." Commander Mitchell nodded approvingly. "They tell the story of someone who answered the call to serve when her country needed her. Someone who put others before herself and paid a price for it. Someone who continues to serve her community, even when that community doesn't appreciate who she really is. Maya felt the weight of 8 months of hidden identity pressing down on her. She had spent so long trying to be invisible, trying to blend in and avoid questions about her past, that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen and understood. "I don't know how to be that person anymore," she admitted quietly. "The person you're describing. I don't know how to be Lieutenant Rodriguez in civilian clothes." "See," Commander Mitchell smiled. "You don't have to be Lieutenant Rodriguez in civilian clothes," he said. "You just have to be Maya Rodriguez, who happens to have served her country with honor. The woman who saved Emma Martinez this morning, not because she was ordered to, but because that's who she is." As if summoned by their conversation, the bell chimed again, and Emma Martinez walked in, followed by what appeared to be her parents. Emma looked healthy and alert, a stark contrast to the pale, unconscious girl Maya had helped that morning. "There she is," Emma said, pointing toward Maya. "That's the woman who saved my life." Emma's father, a tall man with graying temples, approached the counter with obvious emotion. "We can't thank you enough," he said. "The doctors said if you hadn't acted so quickly, if you hadn't known exactly what to do." He couldn't finish the sentence, but Maya understood. Emma's mother was crying quietly, clutching her daughter's hand. "I'm just glad she's okay," Maya said simply. Emma stepped forward, looking directly at Maya's tattooed arms with obvious curiosity, rather than judgment. "The paramedic said you have medical training. Are you a nurse or something?" Maya glanced at Commander Mitchell, who nodded encouragingly. "I was a combat medic in the Marines," she said, and the words felt strange after months of hiding that part of herself. Emma's eyes widened with obvious admiration. "That is so cool. You must have helped so many people." "She did," Commander Mitchell confirmed. "Lieutenant Rodriguez served 3 tours in Afghanistan and was awarded the Purple Heart for her service." Emma's father extended his hand to Maya with obvious respect. "Thank you for your service, Lieutenant, and thank you for saving my daughter's life." Maya shook his hand, feeling something shift inside her chest. For the first time in months, she felt the pride and purpose that had once defined her military service. She had been so focused on hiding from her past that she had forgotten the honor that came with it. The coffee shop was still silent, but the quality of the silence had changed. Where before there had been judgment and disapproval, now there was respect and understanding. Maya could see customers looking at her tattoos with new eyes, seeing symbols of service rather than signs of rebellion. Commander Mitchell finished his coffee and prepared to leave. "Lieutenant," he said formally, "it's been an honor meeting you. Don't forget who you are or what you represent." As he headed toward the door, Maya called after him. "Commander Mitchell? Why did you come here? How did you know about me?" He turned back with a slight smile. "Let's just say word gets around in certain circles. People notice when a decorated Marine is hiding in plain sight." He paused. "And someone wanted to make sure you got the recognition you deserve." The door closed behind him, leaving Maya surrounded by customers who were seeing her clearly for the first time. The weight of months of hidden identity was lifting, replaced by something she had almost forgotten: the pride of being exactly who she was supposed to be. The weeks that followed Commander Mitchell's revelation transformed Maya's world in ways she had never expected. Word of her military service and heroic actions spread throughout the neighborhood, carried by the customers who had witnessed the confrontation in the coffee shop. The woman who had once been whispered about and judged for her tattoos was now recognized as a decorated veteran who had served her country with honor. Maya found herself struggling to adjust to her new reality. After months of deflecting questions and downplaying her background, she was suddenly faced with customers who wanted to thank her for her service, ask about her experiences, and treat her with a respect she had almost forgotten she deserved. The change was overwhelming and, in some ways, more difficult than the previous judgment had been. Mrs. Henderson had become one of Maya's most vocal supporters, telling anyone who would listen about the young Marine who served excellent coffee and had saved a teenager's life. The elderly woman had even brought her grandson to meet Maya, proudly introducing him to a real American hero who worked at her favorite coffee shop. "I've been thinking about what you said, Mrs. Henderson told Maya one Tuesday morning as she waited for her usual vanilla latte. About people making assumptions based on appearances. I realized I was seeing ink on your skin and missing the story it was trying to tell. Maya nodded while working the espresso machine, still adjusting to these more meaningful conversations. Most people see what they expect to see. Would you? Mrs. Henderson hesitated, looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. Would you mind telling me about them sometime? The tattoos? I'd like to understand what they really mean. It was a conversation Maya had never expected to have, but over the following days, she found herself sharing small pieces of her story with interested customers. The geometric patterns on her left arm represented the mountains of Afghanistan where she had served. The intertwined symbols on her right forearm honored fallen comrades. The detailed compass on her wrist pointed toward home, a reminder of what she was fighting for during her darkest moments overseas. Each tattoo had meaning, history, and significance that went far beyond decoration. As Maya began to share these stories, she watched people's understanding deepen and their respect grow. The ink that had once marked her as different or dangerous was now recognized as a testament to sacrifice, service, and survival. Jake had become fascinated by Maya's military background, asking respectful questions about her service, and clearly proud to work alongside someone he now saw as genuinely heroic. Other employees at nearby businesses had started stopping by the coffee shop, curious to meet the Marine veteran who had been hiding in plain sight. But perhaps the most significant change was in Maya herself. For the first time in months, she rolled up her sleeves without hesitation. No longer ashamed of the artwork that covered her arms, she stood straighter, spoke with more confidence, and began to remember the person she had been before civilian life had convinced her to hide who she really was. 3 weeks after Commander Mitchell's visit, Maya was working the morning shift when she noticed an unusual amount of activity on the street outside. Several official-looking vehicles had parked along the block, and she could see people in military dress uniforms moving with purposeful efficiency. Jake noticed too, craning his neck to see through the front window. "What do you think that's about? Some kind of ceremony?" Some kind of ceremony? Maya felt a familiar flutter of anxiety in her stomach. Military ceremonies in her neighborhood seemed unlikely unless they were connected to her somehow. And she couldn't imagine what that connection might be. The bell chimed, and Commander Mitchell entered the shop, but this time he was wearing his full dress uniform, ribbons and decorations precisely arranged across his chest. Behind him came 2 other men in similar formal attire, their bearing and dress immediately identifying them as high-ranking military officers. The coffee shop, which had been buzzing with its usual morning conversation, fell completely silent. Every customer turned to stare at the impressive military delegation that had just entered their neighborhood coffee shop. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," Commander Mitchell said formally, his voice carrying clearly through the silent shop. "We need to speak with you." Maya's hands shook slightly as she set down the coffee pot she had been holding. "Is everything all right, Commander?" "Everything is more than all right," he replied with a smile. "If you could step out from behind the counter, please." Maya glanced around the shop, acutely aware that every eye was on her. Mrs. Henderson was sitting at her usual table, her face bright with curiosity and excitement. Emma Martinez was there too, having stopped by with friends before school, all of them watching with obvious anticipation. "Maya," Jake whispered. "What's going on?" "I honestly don't know," Maya replied, but she untied her apron and walked around the counter to face the uniformed delegation. Commander Mitchell stepped forward, his expression serious but warm. "Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps. It is my honor to be here today, on behalf of your fellow service members and the grateful citizens of this community." One of the other officers, a man with stars on his collar who was clearly very high-ranking, stepped forward carrying a formal-looking document and a small velvet box. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," the senior officer began, his voice carrying the authority of command. "Your service record indicates that you were medically discharged following injuries sustained in combat operations in Afghanistan. During your recovery, certain commendations that had been recommended for your actions were delayed in processing due to administrative issues related to your medical discharge." Maya felt her heart racing as she tried to understand what was happening. "Sir, I don't understand. 3 weeks ago, Commander Mitchell interjected, someone brought to our attention that a decorated Marine veteran was working in this coffee shop, and that same Marine had recently used her combat medical training to save the life of a civilian. That someone felt strongly that this Marine had not received proper recognition for either her military service or her continued service to her community. The senior officer opened the velvet box, revealing a military decoration that made Maya's breath catch in her throat. Lieutenant Rodriguez, by order of the Commandant of the Marine Corps, you are hereby awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Combat V. In recognition of your heroic actions during combat operations in Afghanistan, specifically your actions on September 15th, when you continued to provide medical aid to wounded Marines despite your own serious injuries. Maya stared at the medal, overwhelmed by emotions she had buried for months. Sir, this isn't necessary. I was just doing my job. No, Lieutenant. The senior officer replied firmly. You went far beyond doing your job. According to witness statements, you remained conscious and continued treating wounded Marines for 27 minutes after sustaining injuries that should have incapacitated you. You saved the lives of 12 Marines that day, and your actions exemplify the highest traditions of Marine Corps service. Commander Mitchell stepped forward again, his voice filled with emotion. But that's not the only reason we're here today. Lieutenant, 3 weeks ago, you used those same skills and that same dedication to service to save the life of Emma Martinez. You didn't hesitate. You didn't seek recognition. You just acted with the same selfless courage that defined your military service. Emma pushed forward from the crowd of customers, tears streaming down her face. You saved my life, she said simply. I wanted them to know what you did. Maya's eyes widened with understanding. You contacted them? Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. My dad is a retired Army colonel. When I told him what happened, how you knew exactly what to do, how you handled the emergency, he said you sounded like military medical personnel. So we looked into it. She glanced toward her father, who Maya now noticed was standing near the back of the shop in his own dress uniform. Emma's father stepped forward. Colonel Martinez, United States Army, retired. When my daughter told me about what happened, and when we learned about your background, I felt it was important that your service be properly recognized, both your military service and your continued service to this community. The senior officer continued with the formal presentation. Lieutenant Rodriguez, in addition to your military commendation, the city of San Diego would like to recognize your civilian heroism. He handed her a certificate and a key. You are hereby named an honorary citizen of the year, and you are being presented with the key to the city in recognition of your service both in uniform and out. Maya stood holding the medal, certificate, and key, overwhelmed by the formal recognition of actions she had never expected to be acknowledged. Around her, the coffee shop had erupted in spontaneous applause from customers who had witnessed her journey from judgment to recognition. But Commander Mitchell wasn't finished. Lieutenant Rodriguez, there's one more thing. His voice grew more formal, and Maya noticed that all the military personnel present had come to attention. By direction of the commanding officer, Naval Special Warfare Group 1, you are hereby granted the honor and respect due to a decorated Marine veteran who has continued to serve her community with distinction. What happened next took Maya's breath away. Commander Mitchell, followed by every military person present, came to attention and rendered a perfect military salute. The gesture was formal, respectful, and deeply moving. A recognition from the military community that transcended rank and service branch. Maya, operating on instinct and training that never truly left her, returned the salute with precision that spoke to her years of service. For a moment, she was Lieutenant Rodriguez again, proud and confident in her uniform and her service. The coffee shop erupted in applause again, but this time it was accompanied by cheers and the sound of people crying with emotion. Mrs. Henderson was sobbing openly, clearly overwhelmed by the ceremony she had witnessed. Other customers were taking pictures and videos, wanting to capture this moment of recognition and honor. As the formal presentations concluded and the military delegation prepared to leave, Commander Mitchell approached Maya one final time. "There's something else you should know, Lieutenant," he said quietly, ensuring their conversation remained private. "The nomination for your Commendation Medal came from your former commanding officer in Afghanistan, Colonel Sarah Chen. She's been tracking your whereabouts since your discharge, worried about how you were adjusting to civilian life." Maya's eyes widened. Colonel Chen had been more than a commanding officer. She had been a mentor, and, in many ways, a mother figure during Maya's darkest moments of recovery. "She asked me to give you this," Commander Mitchell continued, handing Maya a sealed envelope. "And to tell you that she's proud of the Marine you were and the woman you've become." Maya took the envelope with trembling hands, recognizing Colonel Chen's precise handwriting on the outside. "Is she? She's stationed at Pendleton now." Commander Mitchell smiled. "About 30 minutes from here. She'd very much like to see you, when you're ready." As the military delegation departed, Maya found herself surrounded by customers who wanted to congratulate her, thank her, and share in this moment of recognition. People who had once whispered about her tattoos now spoke openly about her service and sacrifice. Mrs. Henderson approached her with obvious emotion. "My dear, I owe you such an apology. All these months, I've been looking at a hero and seeing only what I feared to understand." "You don't owe me anything, Mrs. Henderson," Maya replied, but the older woman shook her head firmly. "I owe you the respect you've always deserved, and I owe you my thanks for your service, for saving that young woman's life, and for showing this old woman that her assumptions about people can be completely wrong." Emma Martinez hugged Maya tightly, still emotional from the ceremony. "Thank you for saving my life. And thank you for showing me what real courage looks like." As the excitement of the morning began to settle, Maya found herself behind the counter again. But everything had changed. She wore her Commendation Medal pinned to her apron, and the key to the city sat prominently on the counter where customers could see it. Her tattoos were fully visible, no longer hidden beneath long sleeves, and customers asked about them with respect and genuine interest, rather than judgment and suspicion. Jake was practically bouncing with excitement as he worked beside her. "This is the coolest thing that's ever happened," he said. "I can't believe I've been working with a decorated war hero this whole time." Maya smiled, feeling more at peace than she had in months. "I'm the same person I was yesterday, Jake." "No, you're not," he replied seriously. "Yesterday you were a great barista who happened to be a veteran hiding her service. Today you're a decorated Marine who makes excellent coffee and saves lives in her spare time. There's a difference." As Maya reflected on his words, she realized he was right. She was the same person, but she was no longer hiding from who that person really was. The woman who had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, who had saved 12 Marines despite her own injuries, who continued to help people because that was who she was. That woman deserved to exist in full view, tattoos and all. The bell chimed again, and a new customer approached the counter. A young woman in military fatigues who looked nervous and uncertain. Maya recognized the expression immediately. It was the same one she had worn for months. The look of someone trying to hide their military identity in civilian spaces. "What can I get for you?" Maya asked warmly, making sure her medals and decorations were clearly visible. The young woman's eyes immediately went to Maya's Commendation Medal, and her posture straightened slightly. "Large coffee, black," she said, then added hesitantly, "Nice hardware, Marine." Maya smiled, understanding exactly what this customer needed to hear. "Thank you." "Sailor. Where are you stationed?" 32nd Street Naval Station," the woman replied. And Maya could see her relaxing, as she realized she was in the company of someone who understood military life. "I'm Maya Rodriguez, former Marine Corps medic," Maya said, extending her hand. "And you're welcome here exactly as you are." The young sailor shook her hand with obvious relief and gratitude. "Thank you, ma'am. It's good to meet another service member." As Maya poured the sailor's coffee, she realized that this was what Commander Mitchell had meant about honoring what her tattoos really represented. They weren't just symbols of her own service. They were a signal to other veterans that they had found someone who understood their experiences, their challenges, and their sacrifices. Mrs. Henderson, who had been watching this interaction, approached the counter after the sailor left. "That young woman looked like she needed to meet you," she observed. She needed to know she wasn't alone, Maya replied. Sometimes that's the most important thing you can give someone. Mrs. Henderson nodded thoughtfully. I think I'm beginning to understand what those tattoos really mean. They're not just about your past, are they? They're about who you are and who you'll always be. Maya looked down at her tattooed arms, seeing them clearly for the first time in months. Each mark told a story of service, sacrifice, and survival. Each symbol represented not just what she had done, but who she remained committed to being. They're about remembering, Maya said. Remembering what matters, what I'm capable of, and why I'm here. As her shift continued, Maya noticed that she moved differently, with more confidence, more purpose, and less concern about what others might think. The woman who had spent months hiding her true self was gone, replaced by someone who understood that her service, her scars, and her tattoos were all part of the same story. A story worth telling and worth honoring. The day that had begun like any other had become the day Maya Rodriguez stopped hiding from who she really was and started embracing everything that made her the person others needed her to be. The ink that had once marked her as different now marked her as exactly who she was meant to be. A Marine, a hero, and a woman whose story was finally being told in full. That evening, as Maya closed the shop and prepared to head home, she opened Colonel Chen's letter. The words were simple but powerful. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Welcome home, Lieutenant. The Corps, and the world, needs who you really are. Maya folded the letter carefully, tucked it into her pocket next to her commendation medal, and walked home with her tattoos fully visible and her head held high. For the first time in months, she was exactly who she was supposed to be.